Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Just a quick one on the Conor Benn, Chris Eubank 23rd of December proposed date over in, is it Abu Dhabi? It's in the UAE anyway. It was announced by Eddie Hearn about a day and a half ago, so obviously this is yesterday's news, literally, the modern internet age. But I'm kind of curious because since when did December the 23rd become the sort of new vogue date for fights? Because Fury and Usyk has been proposed. That's one of the dates. They did say that date or over in January 2024. Well, I can only assume that Hearn wouldn't be gambling if he felt there was any chance of Fury and Usyk getting it on the 23rd of December. I think he's presuming that there's going to be I mean, don't forget Fury's got to deal with Ngannou, which he should, but he could get injured. You never know. He could rip anything, rip a ligament. He could get a cut. You know, it could be anything. I don't think he'll lose, but I mean, you know what I mean. Something that could postpone the fight, and also he doesn't look in great shape for Ngannou, so a bit of a fat camp might be needed. So I don't think Hearn would have put Ben Eubank on that date if he wasn't convinced that it was going to be an available date, because there's no way on earth that Eubank and Ben, which might be a success in the UK, I think it probably will be, can compete internationally with a heavyweight undisputed heavyweight title fight. So I think that's the first thing. Second thing is obviously it's on in the UAE in Abu Dhabi because we know all about Ben's failed tests and he hasn't proved that he's innocent, but he is cleared to fight and so on. And okay, I get it. I'm not going to go into another rant, but I've got to be honest. Ever since this fight was mentioned, way back, before we knew anything about Ben failing tests, I was never interested in it. I think it's a gimmick fight. It's not like there's any belts on the line. I mean, a guy jumping up from welterweight, who was in against an incredibly courageous guy last time out over in, was it in Florida, wasn't it? He fought that Mexican kid, and that Mexican kid took some hefty wallops and didn't go anywhere. And he looked really big, that kid did. But more to the point, Ben looked very small. He looked like a small welterweight. Jumping up 2 divisions to take on a guy who's competed at super middleweight. Now, okay, there's a little caveat to this, because Eubank, as we know, was knocked out in the first Liam Williams fight. Could he get knocked out again, even by someone like Ben? It's possible, because Ben is a sharpshooter. He's very explosive. It's not a thudding power he has. It's not a. He's a sort of it's all that hair trigger stuff. It's not what I call the sack of cement. You know, the George Foreman type of power. It's more your sort of. I don't even like mentioning these fighters in the same name as Conor Benn, but you know, it's more of a Tommy Hearns type of power. I know I'm not comparing Conor Benn to Tommy Hearns. Please don't think that. But in style, the style of power, it's explosive. It sort of ignites instantly. But when I say power, I don't necessarily mean that Ben has a lot of power. Before he got pinched for a couple of dodgy tests, nevertheless, he was knocking people out. They were semi-retired, you know, Chris Algieri and who was the other one? Chris Van Heerden. And it created an illusion that he was suddenly a banger. And people, once he pissed hot, said, oh, well, you know, that must be the PEDs that were giving him the extra power. Well, okay, I wouldn't entirely rule out that argument, but the point is that I think Ben's power has been inflated. I like the way he punches. To be honest, I like watching him. I think he has a style that's very fan friendly, regardless of the other moral issues or whatever it is. But I do think that in terms of taking on a middleweight, a healthy middleweight who's made his weight correctly, who's prepared mentally, who's very mentally strong, I think this is a very dodgy area for him to go in. He's on remarkably wafer thin ice. And to be frank with you, my opinion on how the fight will go hasn't changed since early last year when it was announced. I think this is a shoo-in for Eubank, or it should be. And I see Eubank, quite clearly winning the fight. But I suppose there are enough intangibles to make it mildly interesting, but it's always been a gimmick fight to me. The only thing these two guys bring to the table is their names, and that's what's going to sell, and it will sell. It will be a success in Britain. Internationally, you go to America, they kind of, boxing fans in America know who these guys are, but they're not that fussed about them fighting. They kind of like, well, one's a welterweight and one's a middleweight. What's all that about? Who cares? And I tend to share that view. But anyway, do you think it will actually happen? I think it probably will, barring, pull-outs and injuries and so on. 23rd of December seems reasonable to me. Yeah, so, and I think we won't see Fury and Usyk. If we do see it, we won't see it until 2024. I'd be surprised if it was January 2024. I'm thinking March, April. But, with those guys, you just never know. Especially with Fury, you just never know. Anyway, if you've got any comments, leave them below. And thanks for your time as always. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. And give us a like as well if you don't mind. Cheers. Speak soon. Bye for now.